Today I wanted to talk about doubt, and doubt is a funny thing. It's something which takes some work, and one of the ways I would say to you, or would suggest to go about removing doubt or lessening the impact of doubt on your ability to create, would be through reframing it. So instead of saying there's no point in me doing this because it's going to be a complete failure, or I've done this and it's terrible, there's no point in me carrying on, what I would suggest you reframe it as would be a question. And so then it becomes not something which is doomed to fail. It is something which will provide room for growth. So it may be, that you're working on a painting and it's not going quite as well as what you would have hoped. That's fine. That is a normal part of the creative process. The challenge is overcoming that and understanding how you can make the most of things with the next time and the next step. So you ask yourself a question: how could I have made the figure more proportional? How could I have made the colour palette, let's say the colour palette, how can I make that more successful and more harmonious? And that then will give you a goal that you can work on with your next piece. You won't be stagnant. You won't be worrying about what's going wrong. You'll be thinking about how you can improve and grow. And doubt is necessary, right? It's something which is a natural process to working with something that's uncharted. When you're painting, it's always going to be uncharted, right? It's undiscovered territory. So it's the unknown, and that's scary sometimes. But that's also where the excitement is, and where the fulfillment is, and how you can take steps to become confident in making. Now, one of the things I would suggest, and one of the things I used to often suggest to students, would be, how are you using your sources? How are you understanding what you're doing through what you want to achieve? And often there might be a little dance around, I'm looking at this artist and I want to copy them. Don't do that. Don't copy. And by that, what I mean is, you don't want to imitate. You want to be an autonomous, creative painter with agency and confidence. Instead of imitating, assimilate. Okay? You're building in what you know, and you are understanding what is going on elsewhere, and you're merging it into your own knowledge. So an example I would often give to students would be Lucian Freud. I'm not particularly enamoured with the way he uses colour, with his compositional choices, or even with his subject matter. However, that doesn't mean there's things that I can't learn from what he's doing on the picture plane. The one thing I'm really interested in is his sense of how he's laying down marks, how those marks are interacting with each other, and how they're building up resolution within the image. And so you can think of it like that. Maybe there are artists that you're looking at that you're really inspired by. Take what you need from them and build it into your own language to create something unique to you. Okay. One of the other important things that I wanted to cover was understanding what you want to achieve, because often when I've encountered students in tutorials who have been having a hard time with things, it's because of that sense of there is a right way to do this. You know, Painter X did this, so I must be able to do this. But it doesn't work like that at all. For instance, if you're looking at contemporary painting, a lot of contemporary painters will paint directly. And by that I mean colour is laid next to another colour, and it might be blended, it might not, but colour is directly applied next to each other, and it is worked in a way that will show colour, structure, form, tone, volume, all kinds of different problems that will lead to questions. Now, some people are very good at doing that. If you are not good at doing that, that does not mean you're a bad painter. That does not mean you're a failure. What that means is that the way you work is different, and you might be more suited to indirect painting. And the old masters used indirect painting a lot because it would let them have efficiency and speed, and it would let them solve particular problems on the picture plane in a particular order. So an underpainting would be worked in grayscale or a monochromatic tone to be able to solve problems in rendering form. Glazing and the application of colour that came later would work and build on top of the structure already laid underneath. And in that sense, you can solve questions in your picture, in your painting, with greater efficiency. So think about that. Think about if I'm not able to do something, is it because of a particular reason? And the other important thing that's worthwhile noting is if you are... So a bit of background, my practice, I'm absolutely fascinated, obsessed with properties, technical properties of paint. And that is something that I will employ and exploit and try to push as far as I can based on those properties. Okay. Now, if you're coming to a painting and you're saying, I'm going to do this because I want to understand how Painter X worked, and that painter was working, before, let's say, 1840, you'll face a lot of problems trying to replicate that because you won't have access to the materials that they did necessarily. And it's a lot of things, it's how paint is made now. It is what is available now to the artist, and in many respects there is so much more available to artists today than there was 300 years ago. However, there are certain things you can't get today easily, at least within the European Union and the UK, that will set you down a path of insanity. So for instance, lead white, you cannot get lead white. Now that poses certain problems. And that's one of the things that I've been developing in the background for my own practice for a long time. I've come up with a substitute for lead white, because that lets me do things with the paint that I've wanted to do, but I can't do because modern paint doesn't react in that way. So you need to understand, and you need to have a handle on what materials you're using as well, because that will have a big impact on your understanding, your point of reference, and your ability to make something work or not. So if you've not got access to the materials that you might otherwise wish to have access to, think laterally. How can I make this work? What have I got access to? How can I make a success of it? And in that sense, you'll gain confidence in doing, again, because you'll be experimenting, and you will refine your ideas and understand what you want to make. The other worthwhile thing, I think, would be to acknowledge whether you want to do something because someone else does it, and you think that is a way to find contentment within your own practice, or whether it's something you actually want to do. Whether you're doing it because it's copying someone, or whether it's something you actually want to do because you don't know. Maybe it's a starting point for you. And even if it's something you're good at. So for instance, I was always very good at capturing observation. So I thought that would be something I should do. But it irritates me. Just because I can do it doesn't mean I want to do it. But for a long time, it was something I felt I should make use of. Once you can recognise that there is something out there that's unknown, that awaits discovery, that doesn't rely on what you think you should be good at, you will open up a whole expanse of ideas. But it's only through doing that you will recognise that. So if you are afraid of starting a new painting, if you don't know where to start, my advice would just be make a mark. Make a single mark somewhere on your canvas or on your surface that you're working with. I absolutely hate starting a new painting because of all the things that I connect with. It's the thickness of the paint, it's what I can do with paint that's semi-dry, there's a tacky quality to it, there's a push and pull of the skin on the surface. You know, maybe if I've got gesso, traditional gesso, and I use that a lot these days because it absorbs oil, it means that if I move away from a painting for a few days and I come back, it's done some interesting things to the way the paint's drying, and I can then manipulate that. So for me, starting a new painting is always something I dislike intensely, but I get through because I know once I've done that, I can have fun. And one of the arrangements I've come to is having a few paintings on the go, because that means that I'll have one that's later on down the line and one that's a bit earlier on in the process, so I can keep chopping and changing and shifting. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't have one thing on the go, because if it goes awry, shall we say, it will make you feel that much more either defeated or angry or upset, or however you process those emotions. So have a few things on the go that you can come back to and potter around with. Maybe the light's not good for you on a particular day for you to be working on a particular piece, but it's ideal for something else. Just switch. But what you absolutely must do is make. You have to take that step. We live in a time where asking questions is increasingly being shut down, but it's a necessary part of the experience of being human. So you must ask questions. And just start making, start asking questions, start doing, start assimilating, start understanding. Don't be afraid of failure. It's not about failure. It's about growth. It's about who you want to be and exploring facets of yourself that you didn't even know existed.